Good afternoon, Uday. Uh, Thank you for having me here, and I am pleased to interview you today. It's a basic interview for uh, an authentic leadership program at HULT. I just need to go through the informed consent with you, uh, and then you could just say yes or no to me if you would like to go ahead. You are basically invited to participate in a HULT team assignment for a course in authentic leadership. The assignment is exploring authentic leadership and the moral stories that leaders experience over the course of their careers. We are inviting you to participate in the research for this team assignment. Participation in this research means that you will give your consent to the student team to use your answers you give. The confidentiality clause includes that this data will be collected for academic and research processes only. All data will be stored confidentially and accessible only to the student team and academic staff. Your name and affiliation may be anonymous if you wish. Your participation in research is voluntary, and you may withdraw your participation at any time and without any reason. Um, I hope you consent with it. And is it a yes?
Yes.
Thank you so much for that. Let's begin this interview. Uh, could you kindly briefly introduce yourself and describe your current leadership in the role and the industry you work in?
So my name is Uday Gehani. I run a marketing firm called DigiThink Digital. Uh, the marketing firm is based in the UAE, in Dubai specifically. I have currently around 10 employees. Most of them are from the United States itself. And I also hire a number of virtual assistants from across the world based on the specialty. Some of the things that we do are social media marketing, branding, packaging and design, lead generation for firms, and several other marketing activities related to that.
Great. That's really good to hear. What has inspired you to pursue this kind of leadership in your field?
Uh, well, to be honest with you, I the leadership sort of came from the love of my field. When I began in the finance and banking industry, and then I started a small business post the 2008 crisis. Uh, when I started my small business, because I thought it would be great to be an entrepreneur, I discovered that I loved marketing. And because of my love of marketing, I began to learn more and more, and my skill sets started to grow. And I noticed that what happens is, as my skill sets grow, more and more people come and start asking me questions. I can answer problems really effectively. So my client base grew, and my marketing firm grew with that. And it was sort of I just continued in the leadership position because it's a small company. So I'm sort of the person who understands a lot of it, and I answer the questions as they see fit. So I've become a CEO by default.
Really nice, really nice. Can you tell me any personal moral story that you would have and any ethical dilemma on decision making that you must have faced in the past so many years of your experience?
So one of the things that when I ran the marketing firm, I've had multiple moral dilemmas. So right in the beginning, I had decided that I will not take on clients which promote, for example, cigarettes or anything that I see that is not fit, basically for humankind. Um, I also have a lot of clients, international clients in the United States, and marijuana is legal there. And I decided not to go with them. But a real life example of a dilemma which I faced was in the branding and design category of my firm. So we do packaging design for a number of labels, including some of them which have ended up in Virgin. Um, so one of the clients which we had, they had a health related niche, and this client was from the US. So they came up with, they wanted us to do a project. Um, and they wanted to do us to do a branding and design project for a health and fitness watch. But what happened was, when they came on board, they told us to start. They told our designers to write some things on the label, which we came to find out was not real. So, for example, they said, "Can you please put a label of uh, made in America on it?" But because we've been with the company for very long, we knew the manufacturing is not in the United States. The manufacturing was done in China, uh, and they wanted us to put things like US certified, as well as they wanted to us to write certain medical related things on the packaging itself, such as this product can help prevent diabetes, and right, these make these sort of claims which were not really true. So I know that that was a big moral dilemma for us because it is a big client, and what we were worried about is if we tell the client no, will we lose the business and will they go elsewhere? So that was one of the major challenges that we faced in the health sector specifically.
How did you really handle this type of situation? I mean, what was uh, did you associate with some person who could help you out with it, or did you self take the decision by yourself? How did you personally tackle such a dilemma that occurred?
So one of the things that I believe is it's very it was a big concern for me at that time because we had in our company we had what's called concentration risk. Too much of our revenue was coming from this particular client, so obviously it was a big dilemma for me. But I know at the end of the day, if we would go ahead with saying something like manufactured in the United States or giving some sort of medical label when not necessary, what could happen at a later stage is because we also handle the marketing and lead generation for this firm. If it would come out in the market as they scale that they have lied, whatever work we have put in the brand for years would suddenly go to zero. So I took that particular approach, uh, and it was sort of a sole decision where I decided to go ahead and speak with the director of the firm, because I believe that at the end of the day, if I could just explain the reasoning behind me not wanting to do this because it would hurt his brand in the long run, that would be a sensible approach. So that's sort of what I did. I did have a conversation with a few other business colleagues, um, and while they had mixed reviews, at the end of the day, the one thing which we did see eye to eye on was the fact that look, in the long run, if any of this comes out, all the person's marketing efforts will go to null. So it's important to have a conversation with this person. So I spoke to a few people, but at the end of the day, the decision was mine.
Yeah, I hope the moral story of this is that you need to decide by yourself, correct? But you need to discuss it with a few people so that you get a broader horizon on how to tackle these situations. It was very well tackled, though. And basically, were there any personal values or principles that played any sort of a role in shaping your response? Was there a history behind it?
So I know a few things is when a person, for example, buys a product which says made in the United States, for example, and they are in the United States, they may be buying that because of their own, maybe it's a national self-interest, or if I write something like, hey, this product helps diabetes, um, they want authenticity. So similar to that, I'm very similar. If I buy something and the label says something, I want authenticity as well. So I believe honesty in that avenue is a very important thing. So those are just personal values which I have. And to be honest with you, I just believe it's common sense. The more honest you are with people, the more uh, the easier it is to go through with life. So I use that in my personal life, and to a certain extent, even if somebody doesn't have the same value system, I feel that it's important to communicate that if you're working together with somebody else, and I think it pays dividends in the long run.
Was there any sort of a pushback or pressure by your colleagues or your firm employees to act differently, fearing that you might lose the client?
Absolutely, because of the fact that there's a lot of concentration risk. So I have an accountant, and uh, I know that he was he was like, "Hey, I need to handle this carefully because if this backfires, it pretty much kills our margins for the remaining year and puts us under considerable amount of pressure to get somebody this sizable in the business." So I had resistance as well as from the graphic designers at my firm because they wanted us to basically, for them, they know that a large volume of work is given by this particular client. So if I would let this client go, then the issue would be their jobs would come at risk as well if I could not replace such a sizable client. So I did have some pushback. Very valid concerns. Everyone is concerned about their jobs, and obviously the accountant is concerned about what's going to happen with the company. But I believe at the end of the day, it was the right thing to do.
Um, that was very well done. Was What was the final impact of you saying this to the client, and what was did you retain the client? Was you being honest to the client? Did it backfire eventually? What was the consequence of this deal?
So I one of the most important things was when I did mention this to the client, I did not say that from a perspective that I did not want to do this. I sort of reframed my response and made the client think about what would happen to his brand if this were to come out into the open in the long run. Um, because if you approach things from a negotiation standpoint, it's always a better thing to approach them from from your client's point of view or from the beneficiary's point of view. So because I did that, no major impact happened because the client had understood my point of view, as well as because we do packaging right before it goes into manufacturing. We do the design. It was still at a very early stage, so we could minimize the impact early on. Had this been I was coming in at a later stage of sort of the customer cycle, it would be a much more difficult conversation. But lucky enough for us, this was at an early stage. The client agreed not to go with any label, which shows that the product is manufactured in the United States, as well as there are certain medical reasonings he wanted to give of why his fitness device is helpful. He agreed to taper down the benefits as well, but we still made it marketing friendly and sales friendly. So we did, and as well as one more thing is, I took these ideas on paper as to what the replacements would be from my side before I approached the client. I said, hey, we can change the tagline from this to something else, or we can do this to something else. So I showed him ideas, ready ideas. So it was very easy for the client to switch. Basically, any obstacles that would come in his head, I solved them before the first meeting itself.
That was really good. Uh, Basically, how has this experience shaped your approach for any future marketing projects? Has this given you some thought process on your future and how to handle if a similar situation arises?
Yeah, so one of the things that I would say I learned from it is, I know it is difficult, especially when you're a small business and when you're one of the a startup. It is important to reduce concentration risk on any client because there could be ethical dilemmas which might come, and you might have to compromise on the values of your company if cash is so much cash is on the line that your company might shut. So basically, what I learned from it is never put yourself in that position. I mean, this one went well, but it doesn't always mean that the next one will go well. So from my side, diversification of revenue is a very important thing because I know that when you're running a business, challenges like these, you will face them once in a while. And you should hopefully be in a position where if something doesn't agree with you, you should still be able to take some sort of action despite and not be bound by a cash flow of your company or something like that. So yeah, definitely, it's changed my framework in terms of just diversify more, um, be a little more risk averse, and so that if you ever face an ethical dilemma, You can always choose to do what is right versus do something that you have to.
Great. Um, just a final few questions. What advice would you give to a marketing professional who may face similar ethical challenges?
So it's very difficult to say what a person should do. A lot depends on, look, at the end of the day, my advice would be very custom oriented. If you're an employee in a company and your boss comes and tells you to do something, there are two things which in look, there's a reality in which they would evaluate. One is, look, if you got two kids at home and a wife who's not working, it becomes very difficult for you to sort of raise your voice for fear of losing your job. uh, my advice would still be, depending on what you are doing, be straightforward. If it is something which is really on the ethical scale of 1 to 10, 10 being really really bad, uh, you take massive action, whereas in you're like, hey, I will not do this. So for example, if somebody comes and says, hey, I want to promote an alcohol product, and you don't drink alcohol for XYZ reasons, and you don't agree with that philosophy or something like that, you can always communicate that, provided that there's other designers in the firm who can handle something like that. But having said that, reality is not always that simple. Sometimes there are decisions which you need to make, um, for because you want to keep your job. For any marketing professionals, I would say emotional quotient is a very important thing. If you are ever presented with something like this, put yourself in another person's shoes. Try to discuss it out. Sometimes it is important to have hard conversations, and have measured responses. But if you obviously don't agree with something completely, um, you can go hard as in with your response and say, hey, I'm not going to do this. But it is so situational dependent. But my advice in general would be, look, look at the context of everything around you, be situationally aware, and approach things in a cautionary manner, and keep your emotional quotient high, and approach it accordingly. Because sometimes this is real life. Tough stuff happens. Just got to figure out how to deal with it. And one of the best ways to deal with it is to approach somebody that you think is sensible, um, and ask them for advice.
Great. Um, how would you cultivate a culture of ethical decision making within your team, uh, within your personal team or your business team?
I think everything starts with the leadership in an organization. So my first thing would be show rather than tell. So what I would do is, if my I know my actions speak louder than words. So at the end of the day, whenever I'm put in an ethical dilemma, a communication and telling people how you manage something on a regular basis always gives them good guidance. And the other thing is the fact that what I would do is, um, I would act in accordance to what I say. So there are several ethical challenges a company faces in the tenure of its life, and so I would just do the right thing. And by association, during my communication, they would see it, and I would hold them up to that high standard.
Is there anything else you'd like to add? Any further examples or anything about your role of values and integrity in marketing leadership?
If I could add something, it would just be that, um, build your value system from the beginning, and stick to that. As your company scales, you get too lost in the weeds, and there are too many things happening. What a good value system and ethical system right in the beginning allows you to do, it allows you to basically know how you're going to act before the situation presents itself. So what I mean is, um, let's say for example, if I'm the kind of person who decides, hey, I am never going to do something in life, like, hey, I mean, as basic as it might sound, like, hey, I will never steal in my life. So it doesn't matter how much cash is kept in front of me, I will never steal, because I started off early enough with that value system. So what happens is there are certain value systems and ethical systems which you should establish before your company scales, so that as you grow in size, that you have no compromises on that. So so I think that's really important. So when I say value systems, what I mean is, in my opinion, humility is a value. Um, Going out of your way to serve customers is a value. So there's certain value systems, and I believe ethics, um, doing the right thing for the person at any given moment in time, your clients, I think that is a value. And a lot of that is very action oriented. You show more than you tell. But I think it's important to have those value systems in place right in the beginning and communicate that frequently. So as your company grows, everybody sort of knows what you stand for and how things are to go from there.
No, that's really sweet. And anyways, thank you so much for this interview. It's been a pleasure having you, and we will upload this video to YouTube or any other channel. Just needed your consent to do the same, but this will be only for academic purposes.
Sure.
Thank you for uh, coming here and giving us your precious time, and it will be nice to meet you sometime soon. Thank
Sure.
you.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much. All right.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you, bro.